And now, our dear guests, we move on to the fourth lecture of our schedule today with engineer Raphael Ani from PMI in a lecture titled Sustainable Project Management, Closing the Execution Gap. Welcome, Engineer Raphael.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and hello everyone. It's nice to connect with you all. My presentation will be in English, and I apologize for that. So I will like to share my screen at the moment. What I'm here to talk to you about is about the gaps which we have in project management, especially as it pertains or focuses on the sustainable side of things. The order of my presentation is I'll tell you some of the findings that we found and what PMI has done about it. So to start with, the global mega trend is something most of you would have heard from the likes of PMI and so many organizations talking about where the world is going to, how things have changed. These global trends started somewhere in the early 2000s to talk about where the world is going to. And the idea of these global trends is to actually help channel what businesses and how people interact going forward and plan for the future. So in the 2022 global trends of PMI, talking about what is actually affecting work, some of the things that we saw from our research was, of course, digital disruption is the number one thing that is affecting work today. Most people across the world are talking about automation, digitization, AI. That has become very hot topics globally. And that is actually transforming and having very serious effect on what our future would look like. Then you have the issue of climate change, which is what I'm going to talk about a lot more as my presentation goes ahead. But the climate change issue is something as well that we see affecting work and the way we actually work in the global world. Then the demographic shift. Since the pandemic, what we've seen is that a lot of people now have started moving from very congested parts of the world to decongested part of the world, because we now have the flexibility of home working. The younger population, the Gen Zs who are coming into the workforce, prefer what they're calling a work-life balance, a job that gives them the flexibility to do some time in the office and some time at home. And that is becoming a big trend, transforming the way we work. Then there's the economic shift. Yes, in the MENA region, some countries are experiencing it, but even in the West, it's very, very much felt. You know, the cost of living crisis, as we call it here in the United Kingdom, is a big, big topic, because a lot of people, due to the high inflation that ensued after the huge monetary policies that were taken during the pandemic, a lot of people have seen their wealth destroyed, and that is having very grave effect on families and the choices people are making about work. So that is one thing that we see through our trend affecting the way people work. Then the labor shortages. The labor shortages is something that we see globally, but in the construction industry is actually even worse. The research we did shows that 41% of the workforce within the construction industry will retire in about 10 to 15 years. And we're, as an industry, struggling to attract new talent into the industry, which makes things a bit more challenging. Then you have the civic and equality movements going on around the world, some which are very positive, but also coming up with a lot of unrests. And it's on the backdrop of all these that the world is faced, and we're having to make choices in the world we live in today. Now, one thing our research showed about these 6 mega trends in the world is that it's having an immense pressure on infrastructure and fueling the demand or the need for more infrastructure globally. Now, a lot of governments in the world don't have the money to deal with the infrastructure deficit we have today. And what this whole trend is saying is that they have to actually be more effective in the way they utilize their resources, because more people are wanting to actually work in these ways and have to actually take more drastic changes. But are we all ready? Are we, the people that actually do the workforce, ready to take on this whole challenge? And this is on the premise of this that PMI decided to look specifically into the issue of climate change within the construction industry. Now, what we saw when we looked at the issue of climate change in the construction industry was even more worrisome. Construction accounts for 40% of global CO2 emission from fuel combustion, and 25% of global greenhouse gases come from emission mainly in concrete, steel, and aluminum. What this means is that we are one of the worst polluters of the world. So if the global trend that we're seeing is putting more pressure and demanding more infrastructure, it means that we need to fundamentally change the approach on how we deliver projects. But to do that, we can't do it in vacuum. We need to understand where are the challenges on how we deliver projects today, to know how to effectively change the ways of working. Yes, there has been an explosion of technology and a lot of things within the industry, but we need to first articulate and understand how we work today to be able to close those gaps, to make sure that yes, there is more pressure for more infrastructure, but we are developing those infrastructure in a way that we will have a sustainable world where the children and our children's children will have a life and a world to live in. And yes, some people will say, but that's the reason why we have the COP initiative. Yes, COP 21 to 26 have unleashed a huge agenda and movement globally on how to actually address this. Countries like the US or the UK, have promised to go net neutral. They moved it from 2030 to 2035. China has said in 2060. India has said in 2070. It's all well and good, all these governments making these announcements. But what we are seeing is that actually we need to work even earlier. Because, for instance, what happened in Morocco this year and in so many of the world, these adverse effects on weather shows that we are at a critical path. And if we are to develop these new infrastructure, which is needed after a pandemic, because what happens is that after a big recession like we had during the COVID-19 pandemic, most governments, to revive their economy, will invest in infrastructure. With that pressure of the global trends and the push to invest in infrastructure, there is a lot of money going into the sector. So we have to change the way we deliver projects to make sure that, one, we get better outcomes, but secondly, we deliver and develop things that are sustainable and can actually help make the world a better place. So after looking at what has happened from a macroeconomics in the global world, PMI as the arbiter and the global standard in project management decided to take further look on the research on what actually happens at the project level, on the micro level. How do we deliver projects and what kind of numbers are we seeing when we deliver projects? So when we looked at our research, what we found was that 7 out of 10 projects within the construction industry end up over budget. 7 out of 10 projects within the construction industry end up delayed. 7 out of 10 projects within the construction industry end up with scope creep. And what is even more worrisome is that for every $1 billion spent in construction, 127 million is wasted, net zero value. of that 127 million. That's 13% goes to zero, absolute zero value. What this tells us is that the industry, yes, is a big polluter, but also is very inefficient. So you have an industry that it's polluting the industry, being very inefficient in the way we do things, very unsustainable in our standards and a lot of things that we do. But at the same time, we are very wasteful in the way we deliver projects. And when we started looking at these things, it started becoming more worrisome for PMI. And why it became more worrisome for us is that we know that this sector has some of the best brains. You have the engineers, the architects, name it, the wonderful people working in this sector who are trained to a very high standard on their technical abilities. But we did not quite understand how such a sector will also be one of the biggest pollutants, and at the same time, one of the biggest, or one of the most wasteful, is actually the most wasteful sector in the world from our research, from a project point of view. So to that effect, we decided to, consult the industry to try to understand what were the main challenges or what are the main issues the industry is seeing. Because we know that, as I mentioned before, that the people here are very well trained, but why is it that they're finding it difficult to deliver projects that are sustainable and efficient? So what our research found was even more worrisome. So they said we train people very, very well, but we have this fundamental issue of ineffective communication. So it is something that the industry identified that it's become a big problem. And the way this problem manifests itself is that we have projects where people are not aligned, where people do different things, where there are black holes in information, where we have to repeat things, where stakeholders are not engaged, where people are driving different agendas, and all that leads to more waste and running things in a very unsustainable manner, where people don't listen or want to actually apply the standards being pursued by their government. Some of us see this ESG thing as a pet project, and we professionals that actually deliver the projects, that are working on these projects, don't actually communicate it enough to make it embedded as part of the way we do things. Secondly, they see changes in project requirements that it creates a lot of rework within the project life cycle, and it's become a norm in the industry. Most of us know that when they start construction projects, that there'll be a lot of variations. It's taken for granted. But what this says is that we are not doing a lot of the front end thinking properly. Because when we do that front end thinking properly, that's when we put in place the necessary standards to ensure that we're running projects in a sustainable, effective, and profitable way. So that was one pain point we identified from the industry. Another issue is that they mentioned that the complex nature of managing large-scale projects within the industry today require multidisciplinary skills, which most people in the industry don't have. Because yes, while some of us were trained as wonderful architects, wonderful engineers, civil engineers, electrical, mechanical, name it, we actually were not trained to a very good extent, to the same, in my opinion, will argue to the same level to deal with now working with digital people that are going to come with their ideas, with environmental guys that are going to come with their own ideas, with all the, the ecological and the different aspects that we're having to deal with today in projects. And this is a big, big, big issue, because what we tend to do is to resort back to what we know, and that leads us to getting the same result. And as you know, doing the same thing, or repeating the same thing and expecting a different result is the best definition of madness. So that was another issue that we identified when we did this research. Another issue that came up was that with construction projects, and I alluded to this before, the poor design at the front end stage leads to poor execution. And that poor execution manifests itself in the form of rework and things not being planned and procurement being all over the place. All those things, think about a bad procurement cycle or a lot when you have a rework, the amount of waste, the amount of unsustainable practices. When we poison, all the things that go on because of poor design, it's a big, big problem in the industry. And this was something that was communicated back to us. Another issue we saw was that the metrics we use in projects never, ever actually speak to the reality. Most of us have projects green, 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 2 weeks to go live is all red. We do not test the metrics that we have. And those metrics, especially the sustainable one, we just make them tick box exercises, just fill in anything just to get going. Nobody makes sure that we are actually collecting the right data, creating the right impact, and being as efficient. Most importantly, we do not take care in using the right materials that will future-proof our projects, making sure that if there are regulatory changes down the line, that we don't have to rip things apart and start afresh with all the waste and pollution that comes with that. So those were the kind of things as well that came up. Another issue that we saw was the issue of low bidding in contracts. Some of us call it a business practice where we underbid, knowing that we have variation or change order, and then upsell to actually make money. I know in the MENA region, you do mostly lump sum. Then the risk, lump sum with periodic payments. Then you try to share the risk. But all these different types of contracts make it quite challenging in the way we do projects. And it was something that definitely came up during our research with the industry. Last but not the least is the resistance to innovation and technology. Most of you here, how many times have you heard said that we've done it this way for 30 years? While it's something that have become trusted and respected, the issue with that attitude is that it actually not just makes us not attain the level we can actually attain. It also, in a funny sort of way, puts people off to join our industry. So one of the things that we see is that with everything that we've seen now on the ESG side of things, to be able to help us to make that steep change that we need to make, there is the need to apply more innovation and more technology in the way we do things. And if we are so resistant to it, it means that our industry will suffer and continue to pollute the world even further. So it was on the backdrop of these issues that we saw from the industry that we decided to actually go out to take a people approach. And I will pause here to say, yes, today, if you go to conferences, you're not short of the different technology systems that help to run projects, many AI project management solutions all over the place. But this is a very technology-focused approach. It is not the people-focused approach, which in my opinion is the most important, because technology is an enabler. And when you get the people and the mindsets right, they will be able to apply the technology in a way to drive better value. And this has been recognized by even most technological firms. So what we did was we decided to work with CII, which is the Construction Industry Institute, and LCI, which is the Lean Construction Institute, to develop a new way of working within the construction industry. We also had the input of different global companies from across the world. So organizations like Saudi Aramco was involved in the development of this new standard, Amey, DPR, Jacobs. The whole idea was to bring the best practices from different parts of the world and bring it together to become a new way of working. And now let me explain why this new way what is fundamental about this new approach. What we're advocating, yes, most of you have heard about lean ways of working. But if I take a step back, the way we've actually trained people in the industry till today is that we do courses in cost, quality, time, health and safety. They're all done in silos. And then we expect professionals to bring them together when they're in real life scenarios. What the research has shown is that people find it difficult to bring all that together, even with all the different, that's why, even with all the regulatory standards, we're still one of the least effective and least performing sectors. However, what we decided to do was to take a lean approach, to apply the lean methodology. Because when I perform things in a lean manner, I'm not just being effective in the way I utilize resources, I'm also being very, very safe. And if I apply agile or data-driven methods with the use of those computer systems, so infuse all that together, I will get a solution that is safe, cost-effective, and very good with the use of time and other resources. So that's the approach PMI took here in partnership with these organizations to develop a new way that we can actually work to bridge that gap so that we don't take the waterfall approach, which we've used for over 50 years now, to deliver the changes that we want. However, we're advocating using a different approach so that we can get different results. And this different approach is underpinned by these three main aspects or main areas that I spoke about. So the 7 courses which we have as part of this PMI CP is the Built Environment Project Communication Pro, the Built Environment Performance and Materials Pro, the Scope and Change Order Management in Built Environment, the Contract and Risk Management in the Built Environment, the Interface Management in the Built Environment, the Execution Plan in the Built Environment, and the Built Environment Technology and Innovation Pro. And I'll explain a bit what we cover there, how it applies, and how it actually helps people to actually achieve the standards that we are talking about within the industry. So first, you remember I talked about that communication was an issue. So the Built Environment Communication Pro tries to address the communication gaps that we have within projects. How do we communicate across the project lifecycle to make sure that everybody takes sustainability as an important topic and make sure that it's something that we keep everybody accountable across the lifecycle of the project? One of the ways that we've seen that done is by the use of the OBEA standard, the lean method, or some call it the war room. The OBEA standard ensures that teams come together, that we have a lot of discussion early stage, that we have a lot of alignment, that there is that agreement on the processes, the resources we're going to use. That reduces the amount of rework that we have to do, especially from a design to an implementation and a maintenance point of view. That what we are designing is something that can actually be built and can actually be maintained. That is one of the good aspects of using the OBEA way of working, or the OBEA way of communicating early doors in projects. And what that tends to do is to bring teams together early doors. As people will ask me, but sometimes at the design stage, you don't know which organization will be the EPC doing implementation and maintenance. The OBEA concept actually helps if, as an asset owner, the person or the person that will be responsible for the different phases, if they were brought in early doors during the design phase to get involved in that design, it actually helps with a lot more with execution. But not just that lean method, we also, advocate the use of a tool called the Compass tool to measure your communication. That becomes also a very objective way to understand where there are communication gaps and see ways to address it to help the entire project team deliver effectively and make sure that everyone is consistent with the communication of what is being achieved and attained. So these are the main topics that were discussed in this particular course. We'll talk about things like active listening. How much do we listen to what is going on from all the key stakeholders? Our sustainability is a topic that even our communities tell us those in different ways. How many times have you gone to projects in different regions and they tell you that particular animals or plants or insects is something that they're very concerned about? And what are we doing to show the community that we are listening to them? These are the kind of things that we are articulating and that we developed as part of this particular course. Then the next one is the scope and change order management. Today's scope variations are done most times from a gut feeling point of view. In my opinion, when you ask people for information on the documentation of a scope change, they have very little in it. And if anything, it's a very good guesswork. However, there are models that have been developed that actually help to articulate what a scope change means properly, and that will help with objective discussion with key stakeholders, and also helps with addressing the conflicts that we have most times at the end of projects. What also it addresses is how we utilize resources. So this particular course goes to a deep depth on how to actually set up a scope change order management governance structure. And it also applies the different tools on how to measure a scope change, how to articulate the sustainability elements of it, which helps with the reporting to higher management and other external reporting for a particular project. What we also have here are the systems that help enable that can actually help an organization to, from an objective point of view, demonstrate when they have a scope change, what it means, and what sustainable standards have been applied, and can actually articulate and report that in a way that is compelling to the industry. Another topic that we treated as part of this particular curriculum is the interface management. Here, we'll talk about understanding the entire interfaces of a project, making sure that there are no gaps, that no work packages actually missed out, or there are no overlaps, which creates a lot of waste and pollution, and actually simulating how we run projects, the different interfaces, in the most effective way to utilize resources effectively without actually creating more problems on site. I'll give a very simple example. If we have to bring a crane and use the crane over a certain period of time, the interface management helps with actually knowing when to bring in that crane, do the work, and get it out of the site without having to leave it on site and continue to block things should there be any issue within the site. So it's how to actually manage that seamless process from an end-to-end point of view of running a project that we discussed as part of this particular course. Then we have the built environment performance and materials pro. This one goes deeply into ESG. First is that it talks about the metrics that we're using. Are we using the right metrics? What are the sustainable metrics that we have? What global standards? How are we benchmarking it? And most importantly, how are we testing it across the life cycle of the project? And at the end of the project, how do we use it to inform future projects? Then we talk about the materials that we use for projects. How future-proof are those materials? How sustainable have we acquired those materials? Things like self-healing concrete and a lot of other different materials that are available in the industry. Those are the kind of things that we talk about as part of this course. But even more importantly, this course talks about how do we use the right KPIs to foster the right behavior across the life cycle of a project. And that is a very powerful thing that most organizations have told us that has been very effective in especially managing the ESG strategy, because people can actually be able to relate what they are doing and trace it down to the ESG targets of the organization. This is something that most organizations are very excited about, and it has actually been shown to make a lot of huge difference already. Then we have the execution plan in the built environment. Yes, critical path is still very much an approach that is used across the construction industry and across the project management world. However, we know that critical path has its own challenges. So we advocate the use of concepts like advanced work packaging, last planner systems, and CCSU, to design with the end in mind, and then, pick the right startup and other steps that we have across the life cycle of the project. But from an advanced work packaging point of view, is how do we break work down into manageable chunks? Because when we can manage those chunks effectively, then we can manage the waste. It is not just the resources, but we can manage the waste and make sure that we're not polluting the world as we have always done within the industry. But even more importantly, be more effective on our ESG target, because we can drill down to very minute level on how we are being sustainable in the way we actually approach project delivery. So these topics were discussed in very deep extent with examples and case studies on how to apply this across project development lifecycle today. Then we have the contract and risk management. A lot of contracts today have ESG clauses inside them. We talk about different contracting strategies, how to actually manage contractual risk. This is a very important thing, because we know that a contract can be the make or break it for most construction projects. And this is something that we discuss here. How do you manage the disputes? How do you manage the different risks, the claims, the claim methods, the mediation process? We're not trying to create people to become mediators, but if there is a dispute and we have to go to ADR for addressing the dispute, it helps if both sides, both the EPC and asset owner, understands what is expected, present the information in the right way. It helps with actually finding a resolution a lot quicker. And also, it actually helps if both sides understand this. It might actually help for issues never to even get to that point, at the contractual or during the development stage, for things to be managed properly, for issues to be ironed out effectively without having to boil over. So those are some of the key aspects of what is discussed in the contract and risk management and the built environment. Last but not the least, the built environment technology and innovation pro. This particular course talks about the innovation as a culture. I know most of the people in our sector frown when we say, like the word agile. We don't like the word agile because we say we don't do agile in construction, which is understandable. But if you look at what agile is, at the core of agile is just a data-driven approach. So you would have seen in my former slide that I said a data-driven approach. However, we need to foster the culture of being innovative, because the sustainability challenges which we have warrant that we have to do things differently. We have to apply new standards. We have to do things in ways that we've not been conversant to us. But we have to do that while ensuring that we are keeping the environment which we are working in safe. So it's that ability to make for innovation, but still be able to accommodate that innovation without making things unsafe that this course talks about. and it talks about the use of technology. Now, one of the things that we try to do as part of the technology course here is not just to tell you, to give you a bunch of technology and just throw it out at you. If you look at each of the different courses I mentioned in the past, like, communication, scope and change, they all have a PMIS systems there. We try to explain how these systems help to enable the ways of working which we have been advocating across the entire course. Actually, PMI formed a global partnership with Oracle Primavera, Oracle Construction and Engineering and Construction, which is the Primavera, the Aconex, and Unifier group, to fuse the two solutions with this ways of working. Because the point has come when we cannot have ways of working different from technology. People see them as two different things. But actually, there are two different parts that have to unify together, because the technology, from what we saw and from our conversation from Oracle, has failed to deliver the expected ROI because people were not trained and people do not know how to use these technologies properly. So by fusing and bringing our both forces together, we're able to train people on ways of working, the people-centric side of it, and explain to them how to apply these technologies to bring about the changes that will actually make for more sustainable, effective, and profitable projects. So that is the remit of this course. Of course, we talk about the BIM modeling concept here. We talk about data analytics. We talk about the digital twin. All these new technologies coming out, we talk about them and the context on which to apply them. Now, with this course, as I mentioned before, what we're trying to do is to bridge that gap. We don't want to just continue doing things the way we've done it for over 50 years or over 100 years, our waterfall approach. We're trying to help the industry to upskill. People ask me what's the difference between this course and the PMP, and I say that while the PMP was to pass a certification, the course I explained to you, you can actually see, is to upskill people. And the way we look at the course is that someone with only 3 years experience in the industry can take it, and someone with up to 40, 50 years experience in the industry can take it. And why? I'll explain. We say minimum 3 years experience. The reason why we require minimum 3 years experience is that the exams and the content of the course are very application based. They're not theory. They're not just theory that that people use in the lab. They are applications that you can actually apply in the real world environment immediately. Once you've done once you are reading the course, you can apply it into your job immediately. So if someone does not have at least 3 years working in the construction industry, we don't need you to be a project manager, but just working in the industry, they will find it very hard to articulate and understand the concepts which we're explaining. So that's the reason why we require minimum 3 years experience. And now for people with up to 40, 50 years experience in the industry, the days when you were working, ESG was not a particular issue. The need to develop projects that drive impact was not an issue. So they have a lot to learn from this course while maintaining the knowledge they have and the experience they have till date. It's just a way to upskill what they have and make it more applicable in the new world. This is the reason why we believe that people with as little as 3 years experience in the industry can do the course, and people with up to 50 years experience in the industry can do the course. And you don't have to do it in any particular order. You could pick and choose which one, applies to you at each particular time. And then as you find fit, you could do more or you could do less. But the whole idea which PMI is pursuing here is to upskill the industry, is to help the industry start to change the way we think about project delivery, so that within the next 5 to 10 years, we will not just improve our ESG standard in the world, we would also improve in our reduce the amount of pollution that we have. But we believe you could do both while driving a profitable business that we have today, and by doing things in a more effective and eloquent way. And I'll put it into context. One of the research we looked at showed that of all the sectors in the world, construction is the second least effective. Wasteful construction is number one, but construction is the second least effective sector when it comes to project delivery. The tech sector is hovering at about 90 percentile when it comes to effectiveness of project delivery, whereas construction is at 21. The only sector we're better than is agriculture, which is at 19%. Now, for a 5% increment, for only 5% increment in efficiency, so from 21 to 26, in the MENA region, it accounts for $80 billion in the MENA economy. This is the reason why being efficient and being effective and being sustainable goes hand in hand. In our opinion, you could solve the two at the same time, because people think that when you do ESG, it means that other sides suffer. No. This is the reason why we did this research, to make sure that we bring together a new way of working, a new way of actually articulating and looking at things to drive all those together, so that people do not see one as lacking when you do one. So we want to drive profitability, efficiency, and sustainability at the same time. So this particular course, again, is for people that have actually chosen to progress their career within the construction industry. As you can see, as you would agree with me, all the topics I was talking about when I was talking about the content of the course speaks directly to what applies to you on a day-to-day basis. And because construction is such a project-dominated sector, if we get the project level right, we will not just get sustainability right at that level, we'll get profitability right, we'll get efficiency right. And that will roll up to the macro level of the sector globally. So this is the reason why we started from the project level, get it right there, and then it will cascade up. And what are we trying to drive with this new certification? It's really four main things. We're trying to improve efficiency. We're trying to drive more impact. We're trying to deliver effective projects. And we want to embed sustainability as the core of everything we do. And dare I say, fifth, we want to attract young blood into the industry. Today, you'll agree with me, it's easier to find a top civil engineer working for a tech company than working for a traditional civil engineering company. We want to bring them back to appreciate that what we do is not dirty, that what we do is, we should be actually proud of what we built civilization. And we could build the future civilization in a more effective and sustainable way. And that is what we're trying to drive with this new approach to project delivery. And we hope that yourselves in the region, where most of the mega projects are going on in the world today, will adopt these new standards. We'll see these new standards as paramount to the way we do things, and not a nice to have, as we have actually treated it in most places across the world today. So why should anyone bother? Firstly, is that this certification is from a world-class institution. PMI is seen as the gold standard in project management across the globe. And we're looking to set a new standard to project delivery across the construction industry globally. There are a few organizations in the world that have the breadth and reach of PMI to set such a standard globally. Most regions have their regional standards or regional organizations that try to help with running projects. This is the reason why we took a collaborative approach. From the start, you can see that we partnered with different people from across the world, because we know that using our infrastructure, we can actually reach more people and get more fluidity and more standardization of practices across the world, which just helps everybody and makes the sector a more attractive one. Secondly, is that this course becomes an independent affirmation of one's project management skills and ability to apply sustainable standards to what we're doing. So, as I mentioned earlier, most of us are engineers, trained very well on our technical capabilities, but our project management standard was not something that was actually most of us were trained on. So this becomes a way to actually help us with affirming that and showing that we have actually imbibed the ESG values and everything that has to come with it in delivering future projects. Next is that the certification from an organizational point of view will help to improve efficiency, profitability, and sustainability using pure data. This is not gut feeling. This is because from every project, the way we have used the data-driven approach in every project, you can actually be able to see the data that drives those three: the efficiency, the profitability, and the sustainability. For us, those are the three things we want to drive for most organizations. And that's the reason why we believe that this is something that most organizations have to pay attention to. Lastly, is that in the industry, we have a joke that when you ask most people in the construction industry, can you explain to us how you split your resources? It's always design, implementation, and they break it down, and you never hear anything on training, because traditionally the sector have always trained people almost in an apprentice fashion. However, if we are to attract the younger talent, which we so much desperately need in the sector, we have to start taking learning and development more seriously. And this becomes a way for an employer to demonstrate to the employees their commitment to them, because they're upskilling them with cutting edge skills. And this course or this curriculum is modeled to actually help organizations that are new to this show people that even come without a degree to professionalize what they do and give them a roadmap on how to progress their career within an organization and help with retention. So these are some of the advantages that we believe that this particular course would drive for organizations. And I will stop here and thank you all for your time. And please feel free to ask any questions which you might have, and I'll be very happy to provide as much answer. And if you want to write me, my email address is there, and we can take the conversation further. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Engineer Raphael, for this thorough overview of the certification program provided by PMI. We're going to jump in straight to the Q&A. A question received by Ijlal Abdul Qadir. Mega projects like dams and regional roads are sometimes magnifying the negative impact on communities during the flooding and flash floods, for instance. How can engineers be well trained to do or to design resilient projects that are not affected by extreme impacts of climate change?
Sure. No, thank you so much for that question. So one of the things, what he mentioned here is something that is very, very interesting, because if I were to apply to this course, there are so many parts of the course that I could tell you. So one is the communication. First is that, as you said, the community, you have to first communicate to the community what we're trying to do, because that communication builds trust early doors. Some of us actually don't understand the importance of that early stakeholder engagement with the communities that we're going to work with, because they will be the ones that will provide you the trust to ensure that the project becomes successful. Now, it is also very important to communicate with it, also to actually express to people the potential challenges involved in the project. So one of the things that we advocate here is the use of systems that have databases of previous similar projects, understanding those projects and simulating some of the issues peculiar to the new project could be a way to get some sort of idea of what the issues will be. So again, this is the why, as part of this course, we advocate the use of systems. Then applying concepts like advanced work packaging actually helps with doing things in little chunks rather than the big bang approach that we normally use in the sector. Because when we do things in little chunks, we're actually able to identify issues before they happen, but actually have more completion and carry people along a lot more. So those are some of the concepts I would just say on the top of my head, and with other areas that, of the course that we can actually bring into play, that you can actually start to design projects and be able to deliver them so that we get better outcomes, we get better engagement from communities, and we reach and we reach our end goal, which is to reduce the adverse effect from a sustainable point of view. I hope that answers your question.
I'm most definitely jumping into the second question. How can project managers promote resource efficiency and waste reduction in the project execution?
So again, one of the things that we have to do as project managers is to communicate. That's the job of one of the key jobs of a project manager. But on the key metrics, we can use those metrics to our own advantage. If we communicate what the metrics are, you can use those metrics to enforce the right behavior. And when people are doing the wrong things, the metric shows it. And we can test the metric to actually increase trust on those metrics so that people respect what those metrics signify. So things like that are things I will suggest, and I've seen project managers from different parts of the world use to actually, coerce or influence the behavior of people on site. So communication and metrics are two things I will use hand in hand to influence how projects are run and how my colleagues behave with projects.
Absolutely. Engineer Raphael, on the topic of communication, which is an absolute key in project management, how can project managers ensure the engagement of stakeholders and collaboration in sustainability projects or sustainable projects?
So one of the things is that when you communicate the value to people and you carry people along and you listen to their concerns and actually address it, that is the best way to bring people and carry people along in what you're doing. That is the best way to influence people and ensure that they will walk that long route with yourself. And when there are issues, being open and transparent about it, it's a very powerful tool. One other thing is also, because active listening is one of the topics that we covered as part of this course, and people don't actually understand it. Active listening is, for us, is the concept of, people with mega projects today, you're dealing with cultures you've never been with before, but having an understanding and appreciation and empathy to hear what is being said that is not said. For me, that is one of the key elements to influence your key stakeholders, and that's the approach I will advocate. I will suggest that.
Engineer Raphael, you've also mentioned that part of the successful project management is communication, as well as the monitoring the goals, communicating your goals well, or your agenda. What are some effective strategies of measuring or monitoring the environmental and social impacts of a project in order to get stakeholders on board?
So one of the things that we advocate as part of this course is the use of systems. So if we use the relevant systems to measure the right ecological impact, you can objectively show people what's happening and how it's affecting them. There is nothing as powerful as hard, cold data. So one of the things that we advocate as part of this course is data, because you win and finish arguments quicker and easier when you have the raw facts. The problem we have in the industry today is that while we're very good in the calculations when we are constructing, we're not good at picking up the data that shows the fact to influence or make or help our argument. And that's one of the things that we that we're advocating here. So if you infuse those metrics into a system and have a way of collecting the actual, comparing it to show people what is actually happening, and actually, to all stakeholders, make sure they have a periodic report of what's going on. There's nothing as powerful as that in convincing people and influencing people. And that is a strategy we've seen work in other sectors, which we can actually start to apply a lot more within the construction industry.
Engineer Raphael from the PMI, we thank you for your efficient and fruitful presentation, and we hope to collaborate with yourself as well as the institution in future events. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.